Ndewo. That's how we welcome you back to hospital today as we bring to you a full list of sicknesses and their Igbo names. Be sure to watch this video to the very end so you don't miss out on any of them. Let's go to class right away. I am the Igbo tutor, Onye Nkuzi Igbo. Ndewo. That's how we say welcome today to class. Let's begin right away. Remember, we're treating Igbo names for various sicknesses we can find in the hospital or in our body. So let's begin right away. The first one we have, as you can see on the board, is blindness. So what do we call blindness in Igbo language? We call it EC. EC. Please look at the tone mark because that will guide you to know the way it should sound. EC. Low tone. That's the first sickness we have here. Let's move on from here. Second sickness is back pain. Back pain. What do we call this in Igbo language? We call it azumbu. Azumbu. Azu meaning back. Mbu meaning pain. Anything painful is called mbu. On a boom, mbu is paining me. So azumbu is back pain. We move on from here. What's the next sickness we have? We have boil. Boil. What is that in Igbo language? Boil is etuto. Etuto. Please listen to the pronunciation. Etuto is boil in Igbo language. Next sickness, and we have cancer. Cancer. What is that in Igbo language? We call it oria mepe ahụ. Oria mepe ahụ. Oria is generally sickness. Mepe is opening up. And then ahụ is body. It opens and weakens the body system and then makes it to get weakened and inflamed. So that is oria mepe ahụ, cancer. Let's move on from cancer. The next we have is cripple. Cripple. What is that in Igbo language? We call it nguro. Nguro. Nguro, that is cripple. Move on from here. And the next we have is chest pain. What do we call chest pain in Igbo language? We call it obi mbu. Obi mbu. Obi, meaning chest, generally. Mbu, like I said earlier, is something painful. So obi mbu is chest pain. Let's go on from here. And the next we have is cold. Cold. What is that in Igbo? We call it oyi. Oyi, that is cold in Igbo language. Oyi. Let's go on. And the next sickness is cough. Cough. What is that in Igbo language? Cough is okwara. Okwara. That is cough. Okwara. But there are other types of cough we are going to look into. And this one is a serious type that is deadly. Call it tuberculosis. What is that in Igbo language? We call it ukwara nta. Ukwara nta. Remember, the first one is just ukwara. That is ordinary cough. But tuberculosis is ukwara nta. Ukwara nta. That is tuberculosis. Let's look at another type of cough. And this type is catarrh. Catarrh, of course, you know catarrh, nasal congestion. So we call it azuzu in Igbo. Azuzu. Azuzu. That's what we call catarrh in Igbo. Let's move on to the next sickness, and that is chicken pox. Chicken pox. What's the name of that in Igbo language? We call it kitikpa. 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 That is what we call chicken pox in Igbo language. Let's move on from here. The next is diarrhea. Diarrhea. What is that in Igbo language? We call it afọ ọsịsa. Afọ meaning stomach generally. Ọsịsa is purging. Then some people call it otolo, depending on where you come from in Igbo land. Otolo. But generally it's afọ ọsịsa, the most acceptable name for diarrhea. Let's move on from here. And the next we have diabetes. Diabetes. What is that in Igbo? We call it ọrịa mamịrị. Ọrịa mamịrị. Diabetes. Ọrịa mamịrị. Some call it ọya ọtọbịrịbịrị, that is sugar. Now we move on to deaf and dumb. What do we call that in Igbo language? We call it ogbi. Ogbi, deaf and dumb. Obi, Obi. Let's move on from here. The next sickness is epilepsy. Epilepsy. What is that in Igbo language? We call it ahụhụ. Ahụhụ. That is epilepsy in Igbo language. Ahụhụ. Let's move on. Next sickness is elephantiasis. Elephantiasis. We call that in Igbo ụkwụ enyi. Ụkwụ enyi. Elephantiasis. Ụkwụ enyi. That's what we call that in Igbo language. Let's move on from here. The next is fever, generally. Fever, generally. We call fever Iba or ahụọkụ, depending on how you see it. Iba or ahụọkụ, both are referred to as fever. Now we move on. And the next is gangrene. Gangrene, a kind of serious inflammation of the body that defies solution, that leads to the deadness of that part of the body beyond redemption. We call that acha ere. Acha ere, that's what we call gangrene in Igbo. Acha ere, that's the sickness. And then we move on. And what we have next is gonorrhea. Gonorrhea. What is that in Igbo language? We call it nsi nwanyi. Nsi nwanyi. Nsi nwanyi. Nsi is like a poison. And nwanyi refers to a woman. Generally, it's believed that this is taken from a woman's body, but it can also come from a man's body. Nsi nwanyi. That is poison from the woman's body. Nsi nwanyi. Let's move on from here. The next sickness is headache. Headache. What is this in Igbo language? Headache is isi ọwụwa. Isi ọwụwa. That is headache in Igbo. Next sickness, we have hypertension. Hypertension. What is that in Igbo language? We call it ọbara mgbali elu. Ọbara mgbali elu. This is just blood is ọbara. Mgbali elu is rising up. Like the blood pressure rising up. Ọbara mgbali elu. That is hypertension. Move on to the next sickness. And the next is HIV. HIV. We call it ọrịa mmịnwụ. Ọrịa mmịnwụ. Ọrịa mmịnwụ. HIV. Mmịnwụ meaning drying up something. Oh yeah, of course you know is sickness generally. Mmịnwụ is something that dries up. That's how HIV kills finally, dries up the patient. So that's how we derive the name. We move on to the next one, which is hernia. Hernia. What is that in Igbo language? We call it amụ afọ. Amụ afọ. That is hernia. Amụ afọ. Hernia. Chere, that is wait in Igbo language. Have you watched the part 1 of this video? If you have not, good news for you. We have a link to that video right in the description box of this video. Check it out now. And also, we want you to subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you will not miss out on wonderful and enriching contents that will be uploaded to the channel very soon. Do so now, and God will bless you for doing that. Thank you for supporting us. Let's go back to class. Let's go to the next sickness. And what do we have? Hydrocele. Hydrocele. That's the swelling of the testes that is filled with water or something or some other liquid like that. What do we call it in Igbo? We call it EB. 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 That is hydrocele in Igbo language. Let's go on. The next is hunchback. Hunchback. What is that in Igbo language? We call it mkpumkpu azụ. Mkpumkpu azụ. Azụ is back generally. Mkpumkpu is a swelling up or a heel-like structure. Mkpumkpu, bumping of the back. Mkpumkpu azụ. That's what we call it in Igbo language. And then we'll move on to kidney disease. Kidney disease. What is that in Igbo language? We call it ọrịa akụrụ. Ọrịa akụrụ. Of course, ọrịa is sickness generally. Akụrụ refers to the kidney. That is the name. Kidney disease is ọrịa akụrụ. Let's move on from here. And we'll consider another type of internal sickness. Liver disease. What is that? Ọrịa imeju. Imeju is liver generally. So ọrịa imeju is liver disease. Next is leprosy. Leprosy. What is that in Igbo? Leprosy is ekpenta. Ekpenta, leprosy. Ekpenta, that is leprosy in Igbo language. We move to the next sickness, and the next is migraine. Migraine, a kind of headache that is very severe, and we call it okere mbawa isi. Okere mbawa isi. Okere mbawa isi. Of course, isi is relating to head. Mbawa is breaking up of the head somehow. Okere mbawa isi. That is migraine. And then we move to rashes. What is rashes in Igbo language? Rashes is oko. Oko, that is rashes. Oko. Let's move on from here. Oko is rashes. Move on from here. And the next is stroke. Stroke. What is stroke in Igbo language? We call it ahon mpong. Ahon is body. Mpong is drying up. Ahon mpong, that is stroke in Igbo language. Ahon mpong. We'll go on from here, and we have stomach pain. Stomach pain. What is that in Igbo language? We call it afo otita. Afo otita. Afo is stomach generally. Otita is the biting of something. We also call it afo mbu if you want. But generally we accept afo otita. That is stomach pain. Now we move to stomach ulcer. Stomach ulcer. What is that in Igbo language? We call it onya afo. Onya afo. Onya is wound. Afo is stomach. So wound in the belly is onya afo, stomach ulcer. That is our name for it. And the next is toothache. Toothache. What is that in Igbo language? We call it eze mbu. Eze mbu. Of course, you know eze is teeth. And then mbu is pain. Eze mbu, toothache. We'll move on from here. And we have tooth decay. Another form of mouth problem, tooth decay. What do we call that? Eze ure, eze ure, eze ure, teeth decay. Thank you for watching till this point in time. We appreciate your support. But if you have not subscribed to this channel, it is the time to do so as a way of encouraging us to do more. And on the screen are 2 videos we selected which we think will be the best for you right now. Click on either of them, watch now, and you appreciate us later. See you in the next video. Daalụ, Chukwu gọzie gị.